Hello, wine enthusiasts. This is Kai Stromer of KLWines, domestic wine buyer for K&L South. And today we have an awesome opportunity to talk to Peter Heitz, who is our both vineyard manager and winemaker at Turnbull Cellars in Napa Valley. Turnbull Cellars is kind of a historic estate in the scheme of things, founded all the way back in 1973, I think, originally. Anyway, they're right on Highway 29 in Oakville. Oakville is kind of ground zero for much of Napa Valley's best wines. I think we actually have Peter now, so hang on a second. Let's see here. No, here we go. This is the one. Let's see if this works. Technology, our friend. And we should have Peter coming in here. There he is.
Hey.
And then I lost myself. Good to see you, Peter.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having us on board.
Thanks for making the time for us.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So I was giving a little bit of an introduction on Turnbull Cellars in general. You guys have been around since, I think, founded in 79, is it?
I think something. Yeah. 79. It was it was before my time at Turnbull, so I wasn't paying that much attention to it, but that's what I understand.
Before my time too, I had to look it up, as a matter of fact. I probably haven't been completely familiar with the wines since maybe when the 97 came out. I thought that kind of was a real attention getter. So that goes back quite a bit. Not only, but the other thing we were talking about the other day was how not only has Turnbull been around a long time, but I think there's a deep, long-running relationship between K&L and yourself or your family that struck me as an interesting coincidence. Maybe you could share that.
Yeah, it's kind of great. Actually, my dad and one of the owners of K&L are fraternity brothers back in the late 60s, early 70s, I guess, maybe late 60s, at UC Davis. And so, spent some time together as families, and, there's a close connection there. And I've actually, to your faithful followers of K&L, you have, of course, your own great membership program with your KLWines, and I've actually made a couple of those over the years.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so they were really good. It's all secret, of course, but yeah. So, and actually, that was helped me get started making wine. As I bottled up some wine for Kalinda back in I don't know, must have been like 95 or 6 or something like that, when I was just starting.
Sounds like you're due for another one.
That'd be fun. It's always enjoyable to try to find some magic gem for the K&L faithful. So
for those who are watching who don't know, for the handful of people who don't know what the Kalinda wines are, of course it's Kay and Linda Kalinda wines, which is kind of the K&L private brand, and we've had really wonderful properties like yourself contribute to it, and a handful of others. We usually keep it hush hush, but the wines, when you see them on the shelves, they're always tremendous value. So yeah, thanks for contributing to that. So I'm a longtime fan of Turnbull. The wine critics absolutely love the property. There's no shortage of great praise for what's going on there. But maybe you can give just a little historical background to the history of, a little bit your history there, a little bit of your history and how you came into this, and then what makes Turnbull such a special place for you and why you commit your energy there.
Yeah. The magic of Turnbull is that it's all estate grown. And so there's 600 some wineries in the Napa Valley, and there's not very many of us that are all estate grown. People are, long-term contracts or sourcing fruit or spot market, or even buying other people's bulk wine, in a more of a negotiant model. That's pretty common. And so, there's nothing wrong with that. I know I have some friends that make wine that don't own a piece of dirt, could never afford it. And if they could, you couldn't afford their wine because the values of the property and having that kind of infrastructure is real expensive to have, and it's hard to make a value wine that way. And I think Turnbull, thankfully, being a winery that's been around since '79, has some older vineyard holdings that are phenomenal. Got in when things were less expensive, some exceptional properties, and then there's newer properties in the last 20 years that are some of the best in the valley. And I can say that with all sincerity. And so that combination of total control of farming, we farm them ourselves with our own team. And then having our own winery, a lot of wineries aren't really in order. They don't necessarily have full control of a winery, and we have both, including all the equipment and people to take fruit from pruning all the way to the bottle. We have our own bottling line, so it's all that stuff isn't very sexy, but big difference in that you have total control. So in more difficult vintages, which occur even in the Napa Valley, occur once in a while, since it's the same hands that farm and make and care for the product all the way through and we have one eye on quality and not concerned about anything else. It allows us to make really great wine every year. Sometimes we don't make as much, depends on the vintage, but quality is the number one driver. And we're, because of those factors and kind of my pragmatic viewpoint, and the owner of Turnbull is fairly pragmatic too, that focus, but with an understanding that the wines still need to over-deliver, allows us to deliver wine exceptional, some of the best in the Napa Valley, and at the same time deliver high value to our viewers, to our fans. I believe that we should never bottle anything that we wouldn't have on our own holiday table.
Mm-hmm.
That if we paid full price for it, like our customers would, that unless they're buying it at KL, because you guys do have some nice prices, it's a good place to shop. Then we would win Russian roulette with wine buying, which isn't very often, or not very for sure. And so that's the goal, is always to over deliver and capture the sense of place and time. And the magic in that is that Turnbull has exceptional vineyards, and so as a maker, we don't have to. The best wines aren't made; they just happen from great spots. We have great spots, so I'm not a great winemaker. I have enough confidence to get out of the way and let the vineyard do the work.
I think one of the interesting points that you guys make is specific to the fact that you're estate grown 100%, is that every decision you make now in the vineyard has implications 10 or 15 years down the road. So I don't know if everyone is always able to be so sort of forward looking the way you guys are.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of interesting because we are. It's amazing. It's a puzzle. I mean, we're when we replant a vineyard block, that might not come into its fullness. Let's say its ability to tap into that terroir and really show off its shredded stuff. Like, why is that spot so special? For a good 10 years. I've been at Turnbull since 2007, so I'm I think 14 or 15 vintages into it. And in 10 years, I might be retired, or I don't know. Maybe I'll still be here and they'll be putting up with me still. I don't know. But when I'm replanting things, I'm thinking clearly I won't be around when those vines are tailing off into their best years in the 20 and 30 year range. And so when I replant things, I'm thinking about the future winemaker, what he or she, what they might want. And it's not about any of us that are guiding the ship today. That's not the vineyards are special, and they have a future beyond the people that farm them or make the wine for them or care for them, and they'll be doing something in the future, and we have to try to guesstimate what those future people will want. So we make a lot of it's like an investment portfolio. You want to diversify, so we do try to plan ahead by thinking broadly.
And another thing that kind of probably makes your life all the more challenging is, it's often said about making wine, is like you have 1 year to learn something, because if you're making whatever other widget, you can make it, no, it's flawed, it took an hour, let's refine it. But for you, you've got to do all the vineyard work, you've got to do the winemaking work, and then into the bottle, and then you taste it and you go, huh.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully,
that's a year to learn.
We wouldn't get it in the bottle because we'd have that bar of like, what I served this to my wife on her birthday. But if something wasn't working, I mean, if we know that something's going to work, then that's not an experiment. And if you're not experimenting, if you're not trying new things, then you're static and you don't improve. I think the Turnbull wines came on board in 2007. They were pretty great wines. It was a nice finish to start on. It was a very strong vintage. But I think the wines today are better than the when I started.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same vineyard team and the same vineyards and the same equipment. I can't say that we've like instrumentally changed any aspect of it. I haven't changed. I think I've gotten more hands off, and the wines are better for less of me.
I thought you were going to say more handsome.
Getting older. I guess I think that the magic is in the teamwork, and when we've been on a good winning streak for a long time, and it's like a winning team. It's fun, and when you have fun and you bring joy to what you do, I think you do better. So, and with maturity in knowing each vineyard block and what they do and what they cannot do, we're able to farm them more specifically, and individual vineyard members have more responsibility in that and get to bring their own joy and ideas to what we do. And in the cellar, the same thing. And so that that wideness of experience, and we have a great team, and many of them have been. I mean, we have multiple people that have been on the team for 25 plus years, and so there's a lot more. I'm actually one of the more junior people on the team at 15 years, and so that legacy and long-term tenure is important. There's a lot of like you said, the learning curve is long and it's slow, and there's not any redos. If I choose to plant the wrong genetic material, the wrong row angle, and the wrong soil with the wrong rootstock, and then we can hammer away trying to make a wine out of that, but it's like a square peg in a round hole. That's not the way to go about it. So you have to make intelligent decisions. I'm a 14th generation grape grower.
Did you say 14?
14, yeah. 10 generations and 4 generations here in California in Napa Valley. I certainly learned. I of course didn't meet my great grandparents or any of the generations before them, but I learned quite a bit from my grandmother Olivia and my dad and mom, and then I've been professionally making wine and growing grapes for 3 decades now. It goes by fast. But in that time, you better get good at what you do or go do something else.
The organizational memory is just really super critical. And you see there's so many, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of places where they buy fruit. They don't always know who's tending to the vines. They don't really have a lot of control of that. And maybe next year they have a different source. But when you know every single aspect of how a vineyard reacts, the fruit it gives you. I remember asking a winemaker a couple of years ago, he was talking about the challenges of the vintage. And I asked him, well, how did you know what to do? And he goes, it reminded me of 76. And it's like, to have that database of knowledge with your team. And like you said, your people have been there, most of them even longer than yourself. So out working in the vineyards, it's really, that's what brings it all together.
Yeah, it's huge. It's hard to overestimate how important that is. That I don't think I've seen the same vintage twice in my 30 years. Mm-hmm. And in my 15 with Turnbull, every single one of them is different and distinct in my mind. And what happened, you can kind of be like, well, that one plus that one plus that one minus that one, that's kind of like this year. And then you can kind of say, well, we did this and we did that and we didn't do that. And if we do all those things and we sprinkle in some more magic, maybe we'll get an even better result. And we've been successful at that. But that institutional memory is important, and it's something that just takes time to develop. And we're blessed to have that.
And you guys definitely have the sort of ethos at Turnbull that we are farmers first.
We do. Yeah, we grow for other people too. So, and they, our partners on the fruit side appreciate that we know how to make wine. We know what their challenges are. And I actually try to get inside their head and understand what wine they want to make so that we can grow them fruit that's appropriate for their program. Might not be, ideally it would be blocks that I don't prefer, that are perfect for them because they have a different mojo, a different vibe. So, and that certainly exists. So, and it's fun. We get to see what other people do, which is just learn and get better at what we do.
So if anybody's just tuning in, this is Peter Heitz of Turnbull Cellars in Oakville, giving us a little background on the Turnbull property and a little bit about their approach and perspective to making some of California's best wine. So of course, we've always been excited to work with you guys. As if being a farmer wasn't hard enough, the last few years have thrown you some additional curveballs. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what we wouldn't know, the implications of what COVID might have done to actually working in the vineyards and the winery, and then also to fires.
Thanks. Yeah.
How did life get harder for you?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it got harder for almost everybody with COVID, and thankfully it sounds kind of tacky, but it was pretty much business as usual on the back of the house. We farm in the outside. We did more spacing and more masks and sanitized the crap out of shovels and gloves and pruning gear and tractor handles and all that stuff. I think we put so much high-proof alcohol out on different things that people were touching. It sounds like it turned out to not be needed, but at the time, area, I was very worried that somebody was going to get sick and injured. We were really fortunate. It's an outside activity that you can socially space, and people stayed safe and took it seriously, and we were very fortunate that way. We didn't have any sort of Turnbull outbreak or anything like that, but it seemed like it was going to happen, eventually. We got lucky.
There's no phoning it in. You got to show up every day.
Yeah, the Earth keeps going around the sun, and they don't care about COVID or regulations, and our job is to tend them. And there's a whole bunch. The reason we do a whole bunch of work is because a whole bunch of work needs to be done to make grapes that are usable for winemaking. Can't just let the grapes go wild and get a good result. So we were fortunate. I think even my team eventually, not everybody loves to come to work every day. I have a great job, and sometimes I'm like, oh God, I don't know. Nature, you got to remember that, sometimes things seem greener somewhere. Anyways, I guess we were very fortunate. We got to farm. It all worked out. And then in the winemaking part in the cellar, the cellar's pretty big. It's just me and three guys, and there's lots of room to spread out, and they're well ventilated spaces with high ceilings and big doors you can open up, and we wore masks and changed stuff. The really tricky thing was, I think, right at the beginning of COVID, and I was like April, we were bottling our 2018 Napa Cab, one of the wines that we're going to taste today if we get around to it. And it was really scary. I was because our bottling line's tiny. It's pretty compact space. It's inside, and we bring on extra staff to handle some of that work. We were all in N95 masks and glasses, and we put in plexiglass shields, and we were wearing gloves, and it was miserable. I mean, it's not very much fun to be in a surgical. Today we'll bottle the rest. We'll start bottling next week, and everybody's had their 2 shots, and we can wear like little surgical masks, which are a lot more comfortable than these big clamshell things.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a lot more pleasant than it was last year. But I was totally convinced at some point I was particularly concerned that during the harvest season, which is it's paramount that you pick the grapes at the right time. It's like going to the store and picking an avocado or something for guacamole. If you don't get a good one, guacamole is terrible. Rock hard is not going to work, and moldy and super soft and bruised is not going to work. And so getting that moment is the most important thing. And I was convinced that at some point during the harvest, our crew we'd have a positive test, and then everybody would have to quarantine, and for 2 weeks we couldn't do anything, and that was going to be a train wreck. And so we actually started picking. We can harvest about 20 tons of fruit a day and process that, and we farm 150 acres. We yield about 3 tons an acre, so we have about 450 tons to pick each year, give or take 50 maybe. Depends on what Mother Nature shines upon us. But we're picking for 20 to 30 days a year, and if a lot of that fruit, that's like backed up day after day, and if you miss the prime spot, if we missed 2 weeks, 14 days at 20 tons a day, it would be like over half our harvest would be untimed well.
It's a different grape, and you wind up with a different wine.
Different wine, yeah. If you pick Cabernet too early, it tastes like green beans and asparagus, and if you pick it too late, it tastes like raisins and prunes.
Yeah.
Everywhere in between can be nice. You get, start with like red fruit, cranberries, raspberries, strawberries, red plums, dark red cassis, dark plums, blueberries, huckleberries, blackberries, dark cassis. I mean, those are all good things. They're different, but they're functionally useful. You can create a blend out of things that out of those fruit tones and end up with wonderful wines. And in 2020, to kind of get ahead of that, pretty good shot that we were going to get quarantined for 2 weeks sometime during the harvest. I started picking early to try to. The choice isn't between. I decided the choice wasn't like, is it perfect or nothing. I decided, well, if we get shut down for 2 weeks from a quarantine standpoint, then we better get some fruit in the door that's past green beans and asparagus zone, and it's in this red fruit, fresh and bright. And that if we're shut down in the prime spot and we end up picking late and we get a lot of blackberries and black cassis into the edge of raisins, and hopefully not, then we'd have a tool to make wines in the mid zone, which would be nice. And so we started picking a little bit earlier than we would have. And then going back and tasting the 15 vintages I've made, I feel like if anything, my fault is picking too ripe, and I don't think I've used of picking too early too many years. And so we started picking a little bit earlier, which the silver lining of COVID year was that we had a lot of fruit pick before the fires broke out and the smoke started becoming concerning. So we have a great 2020 vintage. It has a lot of fresh vibrancy.
Yeah.
But we avoided what has afflicted most of, or a good chunk of Napa Valley and probably California wines with possible smoke taint. So we have a very nice vintage from 2020, but we wouldn't have had it if it wasn't for COVID twisting my arm and convincing me to pick earlier to avoid a quarantine situation. So yeah, every vintage has its challenges, and we try to have to think about how to make the best of whatever situation's coming. Is it a hot vintage? Do we have a dry winter? Does it look like it's an El Nino year? We're going to have big early rains. We don't really know the answers to those things. We just have to try to be as smart as we can be and adjust and adapt. And then with I think the climate's changing, and we're planning things. We're thinking ahead about that, and we're trying to pick rootstocks that are drought resistant or do better with drier conditions where we wouldn't have to water them as much, or we pick clones and rootstock and varietals that could be more flexible. So we're getting maybe that'll all turn out to be wrong, and the big fault that I'll have, some future winemaker will say, like, I was nuts and like none of that mattered, and he should have just planted more old school cab. But maybe I'll save somebody's bacon in the future. So I probably won't know, but somebody will drink a bottle of wine and they'll know.
To anyone who's watching, who's thinking about becoming a winemaker, I think they're getting a sense of how dynamic that environment can be, and probably nerve-wracking.
It's super fun. I mean, if there weren't challenges, it would be boring. And a formula for it. I love that part. I mean, getting to think outside the box and it's like a little maze, and I'm just trying to, lead our team through that in the best way possible. You don't always win. And if you knew you were going to win all the time and every experiment you did and you knew it was going to work, then it's not an experiment. It's not a game anymore. It's that's done. And it's the sport is that it does have risk, and then you have to make choices. And the lack of making a choice that's not good either. Like sometimes you just got to make a choice. You got to go for it. And if you don't make a choice, that's not positive either.
So the net result of all this is you make amazing wine, and the reason we're here. So I think you have a few samples along with that you're going to talk to us about. I was hoping we could talk about the Sauvignon Blanc right there. Why don't we get started with that, because it's really timely for the season.
Yeah, it's delicious. This is the, it's a little, I had an ice bucket, so the label's a little wrinkled. But this is the 2020 Bill Sauvignon Blanc, one of my favorites. And it tastes great. This is all estate grown right in Oakville. We have Sauvignon Blanc blocks at two of our four vineyards. So the Turnbull Home Ranch right here at the 1979 historic winery on the west side of Oakville. And then we have a block of Sauvignon Blanc over at our famous Fortuna Ranch,
Mm-hmm.
out of the valley, up against the bottom of the Oakville bench. So this is just north of Rudd and across the street from Minor Family, and it's that red volcanic soil over there. The Sauvignon Blanc is right on the edge of that alluvial fan where it kind of transitions into the tan fluvial soil, the bale loam clay that intersects that spot. But I think importantly, the Fortuna site gets more afternoon sun, and the winery site gets a little bit more morning sun due to row angle and the way the Vaca and Mayacamas mount up and the way the sun comes over. So you get a little bit of a different intention from the two sites, and that's useful. You get layer wine. And then we also all the Sauvignon Blanc is whole cluster press, so we don't destem it. We take the whole clusters, and the vast majority of this comes from the winery site itself. So it never even gets loaded on a truck. Really, like gets picked, and the tractor brings box by box right up to the back of the crush pad, and we put it into the press, and then give it a gentle squeeze, and then that juice settles briefly overnight. We rack it the next day and then start fermenting. We ferment the juice in a host of different vessels. We have stainless steel tanks that maintain crisp focus and lift, I would say. Very floral and delicate, but at the same time with some zinging acidity that brings in some of that quelch that I like. We have two conical concrete tanks that are unlined. They're raw concrete, and they seem to keep the lees whipped up a lot, and you build a creamy mid palate and powerful texture element to the wine that's fascinating. We have some unlined clay amphora from a 16th generation ceramicist from Panzano in Tuscany, the Manetti, and they make those by hand.
Mm-hmm. So that's Giovanni Minetti, who's got Fontoti, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I've been there. I've seen his family was originally clay pot producers.
Yeah. If you Siena and the Duomo in Florence, the roof,
Sure.
it's their family. Giovanni's a great guy. Awesome. Fontoti makes some exciting wines. They actually have a wine that's called the Dino that's only aged in amphora.
Okay, I've not tried that.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. We were over there, stopped by Fontoti and did it, and he was nice enough to I was like, well, I'm a California winemaker, and in France they might say, well, you can leave now, thank you. But in Italy, walk in the cellar a little bit more readily, I think. And Giovanni happened to be there, and he ran us down the cellar, and he's like, we're pressing, we're pressing the grapes off, and it was June, and so I was like, unless my Italian's horrible, it's more like Spanglish, and I thought maybe they were racking or something, and it down literally like tipping these clay amphora over into a wooden trough, and there's whole clusters of Sangiovese coming out on stem after having soaked on stem and skins for 8 months, and they were pressing in June, and they were making the Dino, which is named after like their great grandfather that bought Fontoti 5 or 6 generations ago.
Yeah.
Took them out of just doing ceramics and also got into the wine business. And so they've married their ceramic business and so they're making these amphora, and I was like, well, those look cool. Where do you buy those? Are they from some sort of enological store around here? And they're like, we make them. Do you want to go see? And I was like, oh, we want to go see that? Yeah. And so they took us off, beautiful lunch at this great butcher shop, and then to the amphora production, and they were beautiful. So we started with those, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, and they're really it's interesting. You'd think it would be really porous, and the juice would be oxygenated from that porosity of the clay, but they're very, very dense. It's like more oxygen dense than stainless steel. It's impossible, but like a very reductive environment. We have to.
You wouldn't think that.
You wouldn't think that, but these they burn out of the clay, I think, to make it watertight, to make it juice tight, and the juice gets this amazing floral note that's undescribable. It's fantastic. aromatically, it has this like white flowers that are so rare and delicate, and I think that comes through. Maybe that's 5% of this blend, but it's a very important part of it. And I'm totally addicted to using them for the Sauvignon Blanc. And then we have some very seasoned French oak barrels that are in play. But I don't like oak on my Sauvignon Blanc, so it's
Mhm.
invisible here. But it does give a little bit of a vanilla spice to the little blanched almonds, and texturally changes the wine a little bit. So those four pieces come together and makes a really fantastic wine.
That's amazing. Um, that must have been just such a hoot, though, going up and seeing Giovanni Minetti and getting that whole tour and the connection with you being a winemaker. And because I know the visit there is just absolutely spectacular. One of the things that stands out in my mind there was at one point he was looking out, pointing up towards Panzano, and he said, these are my vineyards here. And it's like a giant, they call it the Conca d'Oro.
Yeah.
I said, oh, which one is yours? And he says, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, enough about him. Back to you.
Yeah.
Peter Heitz, Turnbull Cellars. Peter, you got any Cabernet there you might be wanting to talk about too?
Thank you. Here, I've got three. So I thought we'd start with this one. This is our 2018 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's a blend of all four of our estate vineyards. So all estate grown, all elevated in French oak barrels right here at the winery. And it's a fantastic wine. The blend can change with vintages. I'm just going to read off my cheat sheet here. This one's 92% Cab Sauv, 4% Franc, 2% Petit Verdot, 1% Malbec, 1% Merlot. So, like a lot of our wines, it's a little mini Bordeaux blend, where we use different varieties to highlight different aspects. We farm these different varieties on our different ranches, so we have a lot of flexibility with that. And different vintages need different help sometimes, or need different intention, and different wines do. So this is one of my favorite. Turnbull's been making a Cabernet, Napa Valley Cabernet since 1979. And I haven't tasted all of them, of course, but in my time, I think this is one of the best ones that we've ever made. And I was working on the 2019 Napa Cab. We're just filtering. We've blended it, and we're filtering in the cellar right now. And so I was tasting it side by side with the 18, and the 19 is pretty good. I don't know. It's a little bit ridiculous. Every year in Napa, they're like, well, it's another great year. It's the best year in Napa of all time. And it always sounds a little bit like fake, like that's impossible, that you just keep having a better and better year. But if you're improving your craft, then you should be doing better and better every year. Sometimes the vintages don't allow for that. And the 18, which is what's in the awesome KL stores and on your website, it's a fantastic wine. I think it was 95 points from Enthusiast, and it was like Editor's Choice or one of those things. And it has a whole bunch of other accolades. It was pretty widely regarded as a fantastic wine, and I think it's also an incredible price. It'll take the Pepsi Challenge with wine that are easily 2.5 times more expensive from the Napa Valley, and if you put them side by side, you'll be back to buy more and enjoy more Turnbull Napa Valley Cabernet. It's special, and so like why is it so good, and does it deliver such a value? And I think it goes back to that estate vineyard aspect. As old school farmers, we focus on the land and grow good grapes, and if you start with good ingredients, you don't have to be a magician, right? You go to the fish dock or something, and you can buy a nice piece of ahi. All you need is a sharp knife. You're having sashimi. You're not making fish stew, and it's a superior dish. And it doesn't take a lot of making. The magic isn't in the craft of the maker; it's in the craft of the ingredient. And so here, we get to see kind of the easiness of like what Napa Valley can do. And the little bit of Franc brings in some herbal notes. The Petit Verdot brings in a little bit more power. Malbec brings in some fruitiness, and the Merlot makes things a little bit more pretty and softens the blow of that Petit Verdot. Obviously, 92% Cabernet Sauvignon. And wow, I wish we're gonna have to get you some bottles down there so you can check these out.
Well, they're at the store, but I'm at the my home headquarters.
So
The other thing I just wanted to touch though with that Cabernet is with the 18 vintage, which we're currently offering, is how impressed I've been with the 18 vintage. And I think one of the hallmarks of it is sort of how, this may sound strange when we talk about Cabernet, but sort of like how light and refined it is. And I don't mean light as in,
yeah,
there isn't the density of classic Cabernet, but the wines they have energy and they have some restraint and they've got some real lift and they don't just weigh down the palate. They're fresh.
yeah, no, that's a perfect explanation of what the 18 vintage can do. It's kind of interesting. I get to see a lot of different vintages, and I certainly have my preferences as a maker and grower of grapes. The ones that really good wine makes your heart have a little beep or your mind have a little click. And it's hard to kind of put words to what makes that happen or not happen. And it's different for people. And certainly, there are vintages that are bad, and we know why that happens. The fruit was rotten or overripe, or there was a tremendous hailstorm or frost or massive heat. Smoke taint could damage a vintage. So there's lots of things that could like ruin a vintage and keep it from being good. But the difference between a good vintage and an exceptional vintage is hard to know exactly what it was that made that happen. We don't know. If you knew, then you'd be a very wealthy person because you could just make wine in the exceptional vintages and skip all the rest, and then be a little tacky, but it would be possible.
It gets boring.
It's boring. And so we get to make wine every year and see what happens. The 18 vintage, I don't know. There's something, maybe I think you were mentioning it to me that there's this idea where winemakers in Napa think that the even vintages are more boring and the odd vintages are the better ones. And
I've heard that said.
yeah, and I think that too, and I think I'm just lame at making even vintage. I thought it was just me, and that my favorites, I like 13, 15, 17, 19 are magic in my mind.
Yeah.
And 12, 14, 16, 18, are not magic. They are good.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 18, though, in that set of 12, 14, 16, 18 is obviously the best of the evens. With that said, I still prefer the 13s, 15s, 17s, and 19s. But the 18 is the best of the even vintages. It sounds stupid. I'm not into numerology or I don't think there's some voodoo thing about even vintages. It's some sort of wave that I can't perceive what's happening in the vineyard that does that. But the even vintages are exactly what they like. Even sounds like solid citizen, like you know what you're gonna get, and the even ones are always good. But the floor's higher, but the ceiling's lower. I don't know. It just seems that way to me. And the odd vintages tend to be like more dynamic and fresh and lifted and focused, but are not as powerful and easygoing. The 18 vintage seems to me to have the best qualities, that restraint that you mentioned, that it does have a lot of fruit density and richness, but at the same time has lift and focus and the things that excite a winemaker, I think, or a person that drinks too much wine. Like me, I think that the more interesting wines are the ones that aren't about power and density, but freshness and focus. Me,
Sorry, all coming through.
yeah. But so 18 is like the best intersection of those things, which I think is what makes it an exceptional vintage, and part of why they've been so well received and so clamored for, is that it does have. It has more fruit weight and richness, but at the same time has tremendous lift and focus. So it is a great vintage. And when I bottled it, I didn't fully recognize how great it is. And now, 6 months later, the wines are starting to come back from the bottling, and they're reacting to time in the bottle, and they are some of the best wines we've made. So
yeah, and the downside with what they call the great vintages is, they're like, oh, you taste it and you go, oh, that's going to be great in 5 years. But here, when you taste the 18s, you really see how immensely drinkable they are now. They'll be
you are.
Sorry, I keep getting a phone call. My boss is trying to call me. He doesn't know I'm doing this.
The boss.
Sorry about that. So next Cabernet up is going to be, I think, one of the single vineyard wines,
You know,
or the black label, which is a combo.
what I went with is our Reserve Oakville.
Okay.
This is a 2018 Oakville Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon. I popped on the KL website and I looked at what you guys had on tap, and so I tried to pick wines out. Sorry,
Perfect.
off topic, but I went with what looked like was on the shelves and what people had access to. So, and it's kind of, I thought we did the Napa Valley. And, is there an earthquake going on in Hollywood?
Yeah, it's no, just plug it in the phone. Looks like the battery is running low.
Okay.
We'll stabilize it.
Good. And then so the Reserve Oakville is different. We've the Napa Valley wine, the first one, includes all four of our vineyards, and then in the Oakville bottle we take away one of the four vineyards is in Calistoga, up in the northwesternmost corner of the Napa Valley. It's a fantastic vineyard, and that's involved in the Napa Valley blend. And about 30% of that blend is from Calistoga and 70% from Oakville. A lot of wineries would have been tempted to push that number right up to 85% Oakville and then call it Oakville. We don't do that. I think if it says Oakville, it's from Oakville, and if it says that there's no point in playing these percentage games to like make more money. The point's to make wines that taste like place of time. So the Oakville bottling is 100% cab. So here we've also drawn back the curtain of adding in Malbec or Petit Verdot. There's no Merlot. There's no Cab Franc here. This is straight Cabernet Sauvignon. 57% of this is from our Leopoldina vineyard up on top of the Oakville bench, above Dolival and Phelps's Bacchus Ranch, and next to Peter Michael's Au Paradis, and just downslope from Oakville East. The Turnbull has 36 acres planted there, and this is bar none some of the best dirt probably in the world for growing Cabernet. It's exceptional. It's this red volcanic landslide that's boulders and clay, and it gets baked by the afternoon sun. So in Napa Valley, that can be a lot of sun. So our job there is to try to make as much canopy as possible to shield the fruit. So we're working on soil vigor all the time to try to grow bigger vines and shield the fruit. And then this is coupled up with fruit from our Fortuna vineyard, which is on the alluvial fan at the bottom of that landslide. What's known kind of locally as the Rudd alluvial fan. So it's a red volcanic slide there, and that tends to bring in more fresh. It has less angle towards the afternoon sun, and you get a little bit more freshness and focus, and it's a little bit prettier and tends to have some black tea tannins to it. And so you take the massive structure and rich like raciness and hedonistic charms at the top of the hill with the sensibilities of kind of old school farming and freshness and lift and spice box from the bottom of the hill, and you get this wine. And aromatically, it's just a charmer. It's one of those wines when you smell it and you know it. Love the red perfume, and spice box just says come here and take a sip of me, and that's always an exciting thing. I think it's very important in wine that your mind is opened and engaged to take the sip, and you get that from aromatics. So we're always excited the most about wines that have beautiful aromatics.
Yeah, the real estate you've mentioned in terms of where these vineyards are some of the best. I mean, everybody knows these are some of the best vineyard sites in the country. So if there's any question as to why do these wines come out so darn good, I mean, the place matters and you have it.
Yeah, it's exactly why the wines are good at all. It's the only thing that really matters is the vineyards. And the rest of us are just here as caretakers of that for the time that we can be here, to try to respect them and show them what they're, show off what those places do. There will be a long, awesome history of great wines out of these places, and just part of that journey. This wine is the wine that I buy, and I think some of our most faithful followers have figured out that this is the place you want to shop at Turnbull. It's an exceptional wine where it's more about the beauty of structure and texture. You really get a sense of exactly what Oakville tastes like. This wine again would outdo. You could go up and down the road here and find wines that are 2 and 3 times the price, and this wine will compete very favorably with them. We're able to do that because we're not buying somebody else's grapes. They're not making profit on that step before we make use of the fruit. And then our cellar's not filled with really good-looking interns that are expensive, or we have really great marketing, but it's not like top drawer. We don't have the most expensive labels. We think that when you buy a bottle of wine, you should get what's in the wine. What you actually get in the bottle is what is the enjoyment. So we try to be mindful of that. And I think that's important. This wine, I think anybody that picks this up at KL will be super excited to have this in their cellar. And it's a wine, the Napa Valley Cabernet, it has 5 to 15 years ahead of it, and it'll continue to be enjoyable. It's enjoyable today. It's enjoyable deep into the future. This wine is something, as a 2018, it's just a baby. Still totally enjoyable. I could take this bottle home tonight and really enjoy it. But it'll pay dividends, 2-3 years from now. It'll come into its fullness, and in the next 10 years, it'll be just insane how good this wine will be. So it's a really important wine. It's really a benchmark of like what does Oakville taste like. If you were setting up if your viewers are setting up a tasting on like what does Oakville taste like versus what does Hell Mountain taste like, or Stag's Leap taste like, or Spring Mountain, or Mount Veeder. This would be a wine that would be a good choice because it really shows off what does Oakville taste like. This is it, and that's why we call it Oakville Reserve.
Yeah, and my tastings bear that out too, because we've tasted the Turnbull Estate Cab, whether it's the single vineyard or the Reserve or the Black Label. You put them up against anything from same price point to 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. It holds its own. I mean, the magic's in the glass, and like you said, it's just really dedicated people, know their craft, devoid of vanity, and ultimately, here's just a great bottle of wine. So kudos to you guys and to Turnbull. Super wonderful stuff.
Pass it along to the team. They'll be humbled to hear that it's worthy. Thank you.
Yeah, no question. So I think the last thing I just wanted to mention was that you guys are open to the public, but it's by appointment only. So, I mean, spring's coming now, and I think tourism is going to pick up heading to Napa under these circumstances. So please make your appointments if you're going. And if you can't get up there, I think you guys also offer a virtual tasting experience via Zoom and some bottles of wine.
I think so. I'm more the back of the house guy.
Yeah.
And so farming and making wine, but the team in the front is fantastic. They love what they do. They have a lot of passion and care for our visitors. I think we have great customer service. The
property's gorgeous.
Yeah, we are open to the public in general. With it's always best if you're going to a restaurant, make a reservation. You'll get better.
Mm-hmm.
They'll know you're coming, and they'll do it for you. So I always encourage people that are going to come up to the Napa Valley to think ahead about what they want to do. Let those places know that you're coming in, and they'll be able to have a special spot for you, have wines that are open and ready for you, and proper temperature, and a staff person that can take you through them. You get a better experience if you make reservations where you go. I do believe that we have some sort of virtual Zoom type deal where they ship you a assortment of wines, and then one of our awesome wine educators gets on the horn with you, or Zoom or whatever, and takes people through the wines, and that can be fun too. I think as COVID's, hopefully the Bay Area and California is going to be back soon, and we can get back to some semblance of life, and I don't think anybody's kind of want to do one of these virtual things again. Hopefully we'll
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
do stuff. I know I'm ready, and I think that I'm sure your viewers are ready to get up to Napa. It's actually already, the weather up here is beautiful. It's blue skies, little fluffy clouds right now. There's birds singing, the peach trees are blooming, and the grapevines the buds are popping and the shoots are unfurling. You know, there's a lot of tractor work out there, so you get to see a lot of agrarian stuff. And you know, the tasting garden and patio, I kid you not, is pretty busy in a safe way. Crowded. People are spaced well, and you know, you still have to wear masks and all that stuff when you're not sitting. But it is, I think it's a very safe environment. The whole staff has all been double inoculated at this point. Napa County's done a great job of getting, you know, essentially food purveyor people, farmers and winery staff vaccinated. So you'll have a safe and happy time up in the Napa Valley. It feels like the future's just on the doorstep, and we're about to get back to normal.
Yeah, I personally am absolutely anxious to get back up there. It is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Whenever I go, meet people like yourself up there, it just kind of like just really gets you jazzed about why we do what we do. So, Peter, I want to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Heitz of Turnbull Cellars. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. It's really fun to get to chat with you. I'm sorry I'm so wordy, but I appreciate.
That's what we wanted.
That's what you got. Let's catch up again in the future. You know, if you're coming up this way, let us know. We'd love to.
I'll come see you on your turf for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks to the whole KL staff, and be safe. Can't wait till you guys have your stores reopened and people can come in and browse those amazing selections.
It's coming.
Love it. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.